Hey there friends! So I have another YouTube video for you guys, and this time I am going to be painting a wave in watercolor. Water in watercolor is quite tricky, so I'm actually pretty excited to have reached this point in my artistic growth. I have attempted to paint beaches, waves, water quite a few times and didn't get the result I really wanted, and this time I did. So this is going to be a speed paint, but it is a long speed paint, so let's get right into it. In this video, I use a blend of natural squirrel hair and synthetic brushes of different sizes. As for paper, I use 140-pound cold press 100% cotton paper from Arches. It is on the block. For my colors, I have Cerulean, Cobalt Teal, Phthalo Turquoise, Phthalo Blue, and Phthalo Green. And some of those are from Qor and some of those are from Engram. The substance that you see on my paper here is masking fluid that I did prep beforehand for the places that I really needed to stay pristine white. So I'm just wetting my paper here, and I'm going to do wet and wet for the sky. I start placing my color at the top of the paper, and then I will eventually lift up the block so that gravity can assist me in getting a natural flow of blue on this area. I don't want any harsh lines, and I don't want it to look like I've blended it with the brush. So I do help it along a little bit, but a lot of this is water and gravity. Because watercolor dries a little lighter than when it's wet, it took me a few layers to get the blue that I wanted. Here, this is still the first layer because it's still wet and it didn't dry, but I think I did probably 3 or 4 layers by the end of this painting. So now I'm going in, wetting some of these sections to start with my lightest portions of the wave, my first couple layers. Actually, this area is going to end up the darkest area, but you know, just starting the wet and wet, and I want a very smooth blend. One of the reasons why painting water in watercolor is so difficult is because you really have to get to a place where you're almost mastery at water control, because you don't want any harsh edges like anywhere in water. Water is flowy. You don't have harsh edges. It's not a solid, it's a liquid. So this is actually something rather difficult to achieve. So there is a lot of wet and wet and a lot of softening off technique, meaning I will place down pigment and then with a damp brush, clean damp brush, soften the edges so that if I have like a concentrated piece of color, it's in this specific area, but you don't see where it begins and ends. It kind of just like feathers off. So I'm going to be alternating between those techniques throughout this entire painting. You see me jumping around in here with my pigment because there are some places where I have to leave white. So yes, I do have masking fluid on here, but we have to remember that when you place masking fluid on your paper and then you color around it, you are going to get harsh lines. So there are some places where I did want it to be stark, harsh white because of the crashing wave, and there are other places where it's like sea foam, and the sea foam is a little softer. It's a little more of a subtlety to it. So for that, I have to skip around with my brush, try not to be very methodical, be a little more random, but place it in the places I want. It's so hard to explain. Essentially, I have my reference photo to the side, and I know the areas that have sea foam, I'm going to be jumping around in there, but I don't want it to look like tic-tac-toe. I don't want it to look a calculated pattern, so I gotta be a little random with it. Your brain wants to create patterns, so trying to trick your brain to not create patterns is a little difficult. So now here I am paying more attention to the places that do have like a harsh edge, where you will see like a deep blue right up against a pale white. So I'm going in and concentrating on those places, and I'm trying to make sure that the sea foam looks sea foamy and the blue looks crystal blue. Difficult, but so much fun. You're going to see me alternating between a couple brushes here because one of my brushes I am using to lay down my pigment, and the other brush I'm using to soften off edges. And I've noticed that my Ooku brush, which is the one I'm using right here that's tan, is really good at softening off edges and laying down water, and it's not really good for detail. So I have the smaller silver black velvet brush with a finer tip, will give better detail, and the Ooku brush softens off detail. So I alternate between the two. I usually just have them right to my right because I'm right-handed on a rag, and the Ooku brush does not have pigment on it. I try to keep it clean, so after I use it I rinse it and then I dab it off on the rag that is to my right, and that keeps it damp so that whenever I need to just grab it and soften off an edge really fast, I have it ready to go. This kind of water control, knowing when to add water, knowing when a section or a portion that you've done is dry, and knowing when to soften off is a tricky thing to master. I am not going to claim to have mastered it because I still make errors. I've been painting for about 3 years now, so I am no way, shape, or form a master, but I am getting pretty good now. I'm at that point in my journey where I'm pretty confident in my skills. Like, I can do some things really, really, really well. And water control is one of those things that I focused on for a very long time, because in the beginning I was terrible. I was really bad. So when I know that I have a flaw, I feel like I gotta fix it. So this is something that I've worked on for a long time, and now I've gotten pretty good at it. Not to toot my own horn, but toot toot. I'm realizing that I didn't mention one of the blues in the beginning of my video. And this is editing, Chanel. I'm totally not going back to edit that picture with the colors. So sorry, guys. But in the deeper blues that you see on the bottom right, those blues are darker and a bit more unsaturated or dusty looking. That is Indigo by Qor. So where the water is deeper, that is Indigo, mixed with a bit of phthalo turquoise in there. Just wanted to let you know that is a new blue to the bottom right hand corner. Values are probably one of the most important parts of a painting, and it is something that you need to learn to master in all media, not just watercolor. So here is when I realized that the blue that I had used for the sky, which is Cerulean, was never going to get deep enough. And so I had to switch to Phthalo Blue, which is a very transparent and staining color. So I knew that it was going to layer very well on top of the cerulean, and I watered it down quite a bit because phthalo blue is like the exact color of the painter's tape that you see on the border, and I did not want it that deep, but I did want kind of that hue. So I just watered it down a bit. And I made sure to continue painting wet and wet for the sky so that you don't see any harsh lines. I'm sorry if it's dizzying, but I spin around my painting paper non-stop. I'm not going to like crank my wrist in a weird position and possibly hurt it. I'm just gonna flip that paper, guys. And it's not so bad when you're watching a video in real time, but once I speed that up like to 300 and something, it can get a little dizzying. Sorry, friends. So again, here I'm just being aware of my values. You should be constantly adjusting your values throughout completing a painting. It shouldn't just be that you pay attention to your values one time. You are always shifting everything just a little bit further, just a little bit further, or pulling it back, or pushing it. It is a push and pull throughout the whole painting. And so here is when I realize that some places need to be a lot deeper, so that you have the contrast between the crashing part of the wave and the blue part of the wave. And even here I am putting another layer of phthalo blue in the sky, because I'm like, oh, there we go again. It is not dark enough. Now that I have darkened the wave, the sky looks too pale. So as we just mentioned, a painting is a balancing act of adjusting your values throughout the whole thing. But I am a scaredy necko when it comes to adjusting my values, making them deeper. So I will do a whole bunch of light layers and slowly push it. And here is when I finally got the guts and was like, no, this needs to be much deeper right here. And so this is a nice saturated portion of the indigo blue in that area. And I was like, yes, got it just right. Sometimes you just know, guys. Sometimes it's like cooking. It's like that meme where you don't measure your seasonings when you're cooking. You just put the seasonings in until your ancestors say ja. So yeah, that's what Welly said, ja. Sometimes I think I'm too funny, but I'm really not. For those of you that don't know, I am Latinx. Welly is my abuela or grandmother. And ja is enough in Spanish. So you do things until, your ancestors who have passed say enough, you've done enough. It's right now. Editing me here again, I'm totally leaving that in. So here is when you're going to see me alternating between my two brushes. The Ooku brush for softening off edges right here. And then the other brush is called Silver, black velvet being the line, silver brush being the brand. And now is the moment where I told you that we're going to start adding some color to those sea foamy areas that were kind of like enclosed off. So I'm going to do light layers of blue in there because they are not perfect white. They do have some blue underneath because under that sea foam is the crystal blue of the ocean. So yeah, starting with those layers. With watercolor, everything is transparent, so you're layering on top. And so like your first layers that you do, those layers are going to be the deepest tones eventually because they're going to have more layers added to them. So anything that you want to be close to white, you want to work on last. Some people work on them first, but in this case where it's a lot of laying on top of each other, it's last. Sometimes you'll have those white portions on a completely different section of your painting, and so you can concentrate on them whenever you want because they're not being affected by anything else. But this is kind of like a water sandwich, a watercolor sandwich of water. Yeah, I don't think about things before I ramble. At this stage, I'm starting to put the final forms of definition on the wave so that you know where the water is and where the foam is and where the sky is. So just defining those separation of areas now and really getting into the sea foam and making it look a bit more dynamic, making it look like an actual wave and not just color on paper. In order to get those dimensions, I'm really paying attention to my reference, and I am paying attention on my painting to very key places on this painting. Like, not everywhere needs color, only particular places need color, and they need certain values, different values. So the first layer of the top of that wave had dried, and I decided that it needed just one more layer before it was good to go. I would normally call this the fun part, but I hated this part because I misplaced my tool. It is like a eraser, but it's only for removing masking fluid, and it's essentially like a block of like gummy stuff, and the masking fluid will stick to it. So you rub it on your paper, masking fluid sticks to it, and it's easy to pull off. So I misplaced that little thingy that I have. It's only about $5. You guys can get it from Michael's or Amazon or whatever. Sometimes they come in packs of 2 or 3. So because I misplaced it, I'm using my finger and a tweezer for the very small portions. The little bits of masking fluid that I can't really grip to with my finger, those are not going to come off easily. So tweezers and my finger. Another reason why I would not advise using your finger is it spreads the oils that you naturally have on your hand onto your painting. So guys, don't do what I do, do as I say. And I swear, I use that tool mostly, and that's how it got misplaced. I was using it a lot lately, and then, you throw things around in your studio and you never find them again, like your pencil. Anybody else do that? Always misplace their pencil or their scissors? I do. So this is it, guys, the finishing touches. I blended the sea foam, and then once I decided that the sea foam was about right, went in there with some white gouache. I use Titanium White by Mgram, an excellent watercolor and gouache paint company. I think they're pretty good with oils too. Guys, just go check out Mgram. I mean, it's professional and it's expensive, I'm not gonna lie, but it is the best, in my opinion. That's an opinion, guys. But chef's kiss, wonderful. I'm using my smallest little detail brush to do this area. That brush is by Winsor and Newton, and I think it is sable, a red sable brush, natural hair, but it's teeny, teeny, tiny. And I use that for the details for the white. I didn't even have to really pour the white out on my palette. Like, I just had the tube in one hand, and I was just sticking the brush right into the tube and doing that. And then if I needed water, I just dipped the tip of the brush in water, and I was going from there. And it really added the dimension that we needed for those seafoam areas. And there we go, guys. So I removed the tape off camera, and here I am putting my little CC signature on there with a jelly roll pen. And that's what we did, guys. Loved it. So if you like this video, go hit the thumbs up, like it, on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get updates every time I post a video. See you later, friends.